Yeah, of course, he was over the moon. He was over the moon that I got into the business.
Welcome to the Invention Stories podcast, where we share stories of inventors who turn their idea into a product. Please visit our website at www.inventionstories.com. And now, from the Invention Stories podcast World Headquarters Studios in Morro Bay, California, is our host, Robert Baer.
Welcome to the Invention Stories podcast. I am your host, Robert Baer, and thank you for listening. You're listening to episode 44, our interview with Phillipa James and her father's invention, breathing relief. Snoring. Do you share a bed with somebody who snores? It's so frustrating. Well, Laurie James suffered from chronic snoring for decades that affected his relationships. So he invested 8 years of his life and a considerable sum of money to develop the breathing relief nasal dilator. It cured his snoring naturally, and the only regret he had was that he didn't invent it sooner. We now have Laurie James's daughter, Phillipa James, on the line from London, England, so let's get started. Phillipa James, welcome to the Invention Stories podcast. I'd like to ask you a little bit about your background, because your dad was the actual inventor of breathing relief, so did you grow up with breathing relief stories? What was it like?
Well, I mean, the product wasn't invented till I was a little bit older. So I don't know whether do you want me to go into talking about how the product came about?
Wherever you want to start. I usually ask a little bit about the background and then get into it, but we can start off with what is breathing relief?
Breathing relief it's a nasal dilator, and it's basically designed to open up your nostrils to stop people from snoring, but also to help them breathe more easily. So it helps with it has the side effects for various different things. So I'll go a bit into the story, really. What happened was my father basically invented the product because for many years he was struggling with snoring, and it affected a lot of his relationships. He was married a few times, and he was desperate to find a solution, because I think a lot of people find that when you're separated from your partner, it can be quite annoying, and sleep disruption. I mean, the more I've been working in this field, you realize the terrible effects it can have on your body and your health. So he was desperate to find a solution, really. And he also got diagnosed with sleep apnea, which is terrible for your health. And he got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So he was a bit worried. And as a product designer, and he was originally a car designer for many years, he decided that he'd try and find a solution, because he tried the CPAP machine, which is what people use when they have sleep apnea, and he couldn't sleep with it. He couldn't actually get to sleep with the noise of it. And he also tried many other products on the market. And so in the end, he decided that he would invent something himself. Now, this was quite a few years ago. So back then, we didn't have some of the technology that we have today. And it took him 7 years to develop the product. And the reason it took so long was because many other products in the market, it's the specific mix of plastics that are used in the product, which means that you can amend the shape of the product for the nose, because everybody's nose is a little bit different shape. So he spent a long time with many, many different types of plastics, many different prototypes of the product. And back then with prototypes, you had to actually iron cast the metal to make the plastic prototypes. So it took 7 years all in all to get to the kind of final product that we have today. And I was actually involved, so I was quite a bit younger at the time, and I was actually involved in the smaller size of the product. So he initially used his own nose to develop the larger size of the product, and then he used my nose. So that's how I was kind of involved at the beginning before I started working in the business.
Had Laurie, your pop, had he been a inventor before, or was this sort of the first time for him?
Well, I think when you're in the car designing industry, he had invented, but it was more in that field. So it was product design and bodywork and certain gadgets within that. But in terms of outside of that into an actual product, this was the first real product. I mean, I remember growing up, he was always gimmicky. So he always had gadgets, or he'd make things to make our lives easier, but it was never something that we actually produced. But this, I mean, he made it, and it helped him so much initially for him that he decided he wanted us to take it to market, because we wanted to help other people with this problem, because it wasn't just him who had this problem.
I think probably the majority of the people, and that's just a completely wild guess, have an issue with their partner snoring. I mean, and there's a lot of frustration. And let me ask you about the name and the website. The website is breathingrelief.com.
Yep.
And I love the name, obviously, because it's great. How did he come upon the name?
Well, I think that we realized from the beginning that actually there were so many different side effects from using the product that it wasn't just about snoring, even though that was initially why he developed it. He didn't want to go the snoring route, and it relieves your body in a way. It's kind of a play on words. And when you use it at night, for example, runners, if they use the product at night, it helps with sleep recovery, things like that. So it is almost like a relief for your body that you're not snoring, that you've got sleep recovery. So I think that's kind of where the name came from.
All right. And so you said it took him 7 years to develop it. Was that for both the prototype and the patent process?
No, the patent process took a lot longer. But the prototype, I think we had pending on a few of the prototypes, we had the patent. And then when we got the final one, the patent came through eventually, but it took quite a few years.
Is it labeled sort of a medical device?
No, actually it didn't. And we were in touch with the MHRA, which is our equivalent of your FDA. And we went through the process. It did take quite a long time to go through that process, but it was deemed what's called an over-the-counter product. It's not deemed as a medical product as such. Even though it goes inside you, it's only slight. And so the FDA agreed as well that it's not deemed as a medical product. But I think the reason it took so long was back when we developed the product, we didn't have the tools and technology you have today, like 3D printing. I mean, I look at 3D printing and I think it would have shortened our process a lot. Obviously, we'd still be a little bit restricted with types of plastics, but it would have just helped with the shape and things like that. Whereas back then, we were using wire and, it was real, it's a different world when we initially invented the product.
I can understand that. Is it manufactured in London?
No, it's manufactured in Essex, which isn't far from London. I mean, you're talking about the states, one state to another state's far, but it's probably about an hour outside of London. It's not very far. It's actually slightly closer to where I grew up. And it's a sort of a smaller manufacturing plant because we decided that we wanted to, the first run, definitely manufacture in the UK. And then when we started to produce the product, the interest was with specific brands that are very much about British made. So we decided that we would get the product manufactured and packaged in the UK, which makes it cost a lot more for us to develop the product, but we know we keep the quality, especially with something that's like, although it's not a medical product, it's an over-the-counter product. We wanted to make sure that there were specific standards as well. So yes, it's manufactured and it's still to this day manufactured just outside of London.
Was it the first invention of its kind on the market, or had he tried other products available and they didn't work?
No, he tried other products on the market, but there's quite a few products under different names that are very similar that kind of just stick in your nose, but they haven't got the ability to shape and open the nostrils. And the reason that that's so important is that's what allows the air to flow through, which stops you from opening your mouth, which stops you from kind of opening your mouth and snoring, which was initially, as I mentioned, what this product was developed for. So after trying, he also tried some other products such as mouth guards and things like that. It depends on the person. Some people would benefit from having both a mouth guard and our product, but a lot of people, the product will just help open their nostrils. And once you've trained yourself to breathe through your nose again at night, you won't open your mouth. So some people it's immediate, some people it takes a little while to get used to just breathing through your nose again.
I'm not that familiar with snoring. I mean, isn't it possible to snore with your mouth closed? I mean, don't you dare like, is just opening the nose enough to stop you from snoring?
It depends on the person. If you're going to snore with your mouth shut, it's much more difficult, and also the noise is very much reduced. If you're going to snore with your mouth open because your airways are blocked, then it's going to be a lot louder. So a lot of really loud, if someone's got a really severe snoring problem and they've also got issues with their adenoids, for example, the product may not stop them completely snoring, but what it will do, it will reduce the sound right down. Whereas other people come back to us and say, it's completely changed our lives. my partner's completely stopped snoring or I've completely stopped snoring. And also what I found when I started working in this industry as well was that a lot of women initially wouldn't come forward about snoring, which was really interesting. Now they do a lot more and they admit to it because it's both partners that snore. But it depends on medical issues. And we do recommend certain ways to sleep as well, which helps with the situation. So it would be used in conjunction with that.
And how did you get into it? So your dad was selling it and being the entrepreneur part of it. How did you get into the business?
So he developed the product and then I took it to market. So that's how it works. So my background was in marketing. So basically, I think he wanted to market it and we started looking at a few things and then I realized it was going to be a much more serious full-time situation. So I left the job role that I was in and I took it on full-time and we developed the packaging and started taking it to market. I mean, where we are now, we're about 3 different packagings in. It looked different at the beginning. We've gone through a few websites, over the last few years. But that's how I got into it because my background was in marketing.
Was he really excited that you, my dad always wanted me to go into his business. So how much did that mean to your dad that you wanted to work with him to sell it?
Yeah, I think also because I was part of the process. I didn't actually design it, but I was so used to it that, yeah, of course, he was over the moon. He was over the moon that I got into the business. But it was something, I was doing what I love anyway, because I love my passion is, marketing and also helping people. So it was a no-brainer for me, really.
Okay, that's the good side. Now, the downside is, let's say you and your dad get together, maybe you just want to go see a movie or something. Isn't it just like too hard or too easy for him or you to start talking shop, Like, can you get away from it when you were,
To be honest, I think I've been brought up. He was always, before when he did run his own company as a car designer. So I've been brought up with him running businesses and I have a tendency to be exactly the same in that I will talk shop a lot. I love what I do. And I think when you love what you do, you like talking about it. So I'm also renowned for doing the same thing. So I didn't even notice. And as the first time anyone's probably questioned me on it. And I expect we probably did, but it was a great topic of conversation. So it didn't matter.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
No, I know people who work in the family business and it's like they just want to, watch a football game or whatever. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, their dad's talking to them about it. But no, as long as you loved it and you didn't mind, then that's cool.
No.
Now, where is it being sold, especially here in the United States? Where can we find it?
So in the States, it's only online at the moment. Because in the UK, we kind of sell through independent stores, also one of our supermarket chains. And we also sell across Europe and in the Middle East. But in the States, we're only online.
Do you have it in the Marks and Spencers?
It was Waitrose.
Okay. How did you get into that store? Was it you that got
Yes.
there?
Well, you have to meet with a buyer. That was probably when we really took off. And you have to meet with a buyer for the store and you have to pitch the product in. And I think this was where we really found they like British products more than anything. It's a really high quality store. I don't know if you've heard of it over there, but they're part of the John Lewis Group. It's a very ethical store. It's found all the way across the UK. Even the people that work there have shares in the company. They produce very high quality and only sell high quality products. And so I went to meet the buyer and I was very scared. And she was lovely. And we talked about the product and how it was British made and the story behind it. And she really liked that. So they agreed to stock the product.
Okay. Now, we have 330 million people here in the United States. And I think last time I checked, you had like 65 million. So it's like 5 times as many people here just in general. Or maybe you look at China or you look at India where the population's enormous. Why not focus on trying to grow it there, which would really, if you get 2% of the market, think about how much that is. Why not come over here for like a month and just rock it, go everywhere? Just have you thought of that?
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you because I'm quite happy to share this. For a British company coming into the US, we really need a partner. And I've tried 3 times to partner up with people. I've had months of meetings and we just haven't found the right partner that it would work both ways to partner up and help us to get into the market. And it's a really, really time consuming. It takes a lot of my time to go through that process. So I think after doing that a few times, I'm having a break and I'm focusing on where we are at the moment in Europe and the UK and other countries. But I'm definitely open to it if the right company came along and the right partner came along. Of course, we'd like the product to be everywhere, but it would have to be, the right partner, and they'd also have to love the product.
It seems like, getting them to try it. And they may not say it, but probably a good portion has snoring issues. And if this solves it for them, people don't mind selling what they believe in. They prefer it. What do you think is the biggest obstacle that you have, and how do you overcome it?
Oh, it's a difficult one. I think one of the biggest obstacles we have in terms of being a manufacturer and also we sell e-commerce is that our product is reusable, which is part of the reason we wanted to make an ethical product. But actually, when it comes down to it, it's got a 6-month lifespan, but actually sometimes people can last that out to a year. So our repeat purchases are every year, whereas when someone's selling an FMCG product, they would be buying it on a regular basis. So one of the biggest challenges we have is the fact that we're selling a product that's so ethical and reusable that people are only buying it once every 6 months, every year, rather than more often.
Okay, so the disposability of it, that something's not completely consumable, is your biggest obstacle. Have you considered making a version that's disposable?
It's not really possible with the way the product is and the types of plastics that we use. And also, it's kind of against what we set up at the beginning. We set up something because we wanted to make a product that was ethical, reusable, and we didn't really want to make a product that, like many other consumer products, you just throw away. And I think it's a really good product. And if we were to kind of try and mess around with it, I think we'd lose how good the quality of it. And I don't really want to do that. I'd rather people had a good quality product and they used it for 6 months to a year and then they bought another one. But in terms of it doesn't make business sense as such, but it makes ethical sense.
Well, let me ask you, because it sounds like you actually put it in your nostrils, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Does anybody ever get irritation or anything from putting it in there, or chafing or any kind of thing?
If you're going to sleep on your face or something like that, then it would rub against. But if you basically mold it to your nose, so before you put it in, we give you instructions on how you mold it, and then different exercises to do to make sure it fits in your nose, but it's not too tight. And if you sleep on your side, as we recommend, then you shouldn't have any problems with it. If there is anything like that, then I'd suggest someone to take it out. Maybe they have a sore nose or something like that. So, but also one thing we've found is that people have what's called deviated septums, where the side of their septum goes in and they really struggle to breathe. And I've had a few people that have said it's changed their life, and when they're in the house, they wear it the whole time because otherwise they can't breathe through one side of their nose. So in the house, they wear it the whole time. Then when they go out, they take it out. But it's phenomenal, really.
Okay, I gotta ask, what if somebody's got a cold and one of their noses is just plugged? Do you not wear it during that period?
No, I wouldn't wear it if you've got a really bad cold. I wouldn't wear it because that would probably be the time that if it was going to irritate you, it would. But also, if your nose is completely blocked, then it's not really going to work. If your nose is blocked with lots of congestion. And on the site, we also have a little exercise you can go through to work out if it's right for you. It's a breathing exercise, and you can see if your nostrils collapse. And a lot of people's nostrils do collapse when they do this breathing exercise. And that would be, you just look in the mirror, and that would be when you would need the product and it would benefit you. But if someone's got a really bad cold, you're going to be sniffing and making noises and snoring and all sorts of things at night. So it's not going to help you then. Yeah.
So are you selling them at Alibaba.com or on Amazon or anything?
Alibaba, no. As we were saying before, it's kind of high. It's a premium product. Because of our manufacturing process, we have to be quite vigilant. Even though it's not a pharmaceutical product, we have to be vigilant with how it's packaged and health and safety and things like that. And it's all produced over here in the UK. So we don't sell on Alibaba. We did sell on Amazon, and it is a route that we're looking at again now. but we haven't been selling on. But it was a route we were looking at in the US, whether to work with Amazon US as well.
It seems like because a lot of people just buy on Amazon. I couldn't see any real downside of not selling it there.
It's quite difficult. The problems we have with Amazon actually is that I think that they struggle with the fact that they see it as a pharmaceutical product. So we have to provide a lot of information as to how it isn't. And then to get in touch with them is very difficult. So it's a really long process. So I've actually brought someone on board recently just to do that, go through the Amazon process. So hopefully it will be on Amazon again soon. But there was all sorts of issues we had with that where another company that sold our product, so they bought it wholesale and they sold retail, they actually put on Amazon and they have our account. So we haven't been able to open an account. So we've had a lot of issues and we've tried to contact Amazon about it and it's been time consuming. And in the end, I decided to bring in a specialist because it's actually quite difficult navigating Amazon and getting hold of them when you're such a small supplier.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for being on the Invention Stories podcast. And I just wanted to ask you one last question here. And if somebody had an idea for an invention or to become an entrepreneur and start their own business, what advice would you give them?
Well, I give them the advice that to do a lot of research and also financial research and look at their numbers before they headed into it. But absolutely, I think it's so important to do what you're passionate about. Initially, part-time, whilst you've got your full-time job, it's still possible to do it part-time. And if you're really passionate about it, then eventually you can look at what point you'd be able to take it on full-time. But definitely do your research and crunch your numbers and even get people to help you as well where your strengths don't lie. So where you know you're not as strong, if you're not strong in numbers, get someone to help you with the numbers. As I think it's really important to get people to help you where your weaknesses are and not try to do everything yourself.
You've been listening to episode 44 of the Invention Stories podcast with Phillipa James and Breathing Relief. And I want to thank Phillipa for being our guest today. More information can be found at www.breathingrelief.com. If you would like to become a sponsor of the Invention Stories podcast or have a suggestion on how we can make it better, please contact us at inventionstoriespodcast@gmail.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we invite you to write a positive review for us on iTunes. An easy way to get there is to go to www.inventionstories.com/review. More information and show notes can be found at our website, www.inventionstories.com. Thank you very much for listening today, and please tell a friend.